Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivashikam Vidam Sya Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanashana Shalakya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Supurgam Garganara Sesha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Bidam Ujjalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Bande Vishwagurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Premnoi Bija Pranam Devam Divyatanam Suchandabaranam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Bandetam Shubhadam Mareka Sharanam Yashishwara Shidaram Manshakopatarubyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhyebhaja Patitanam Pavinibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahaparanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Nama. So we're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishna das Kaviraj Goswami. Translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is Antya-lila chapter 5. Ramananda Raya instructs Pradyumna Mishra. Verse number 91. Bangadeshi ek vipra prabhur charite natakore loya aila prabhuke shunate. A Brahmin from Bengal wrote a drama about the characteristics of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and came with a manuscript to induce the Lord to hear it. It says that Brahmin comes from Bangladeshi. It says from Bengal. Well, we may, in that time, Bengal included, of course, East Bengal. A Brahmin from Bengal wrote a drama about the characteristics of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and came with his manuscript to induce the Lord to hear it. Bhagavanacharya Sane Thara Parichai Thare Mili Thara Gare Khorila Aloy. The Brahmin was acquainted with Bhagavanacharya, one of the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, after meeting him at Jagannath Puri, the Brahmin made his residence at Bhagavanacharya's home. Pratame natakte ho tare shunaila tara sange aneka Vaishnava nataka shunila. First, the Brahmin induced Bhagavanacharya to hear the drama, and then many other devotees joined Bhagavanacharya in listening to it. Sabai prasham shenatak parama utam Mahaprabhu re shunaita savar hoilaman. All the Vaishnavas praised the drama, saying, very good, very good. They also desired that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hear the drama. Gita Shloka Granta Kabitva Jay Koryane Pratame Shunayase Swarup Perastane. Customarily, anyone who composed a song, verse, literary composition, or poem about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first had to bring it to Swarup Damodar to be heard. Swarup Thai Uttare Jari Loya Taramon Tabe Mahaprabhu Thai Koraya Shravan. If passed by Swarup Damodar, could be presented for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to hear. Rasabas Hoy Jari Siddhanta Viroda Sahitena Pare Prabhu Mani Hoy Kroda. If there were a hint of transcendental mellows overlap rasabas in a manner contrary to the principles of the bhakti cult, Mahaprabhu would not tolerate it and would become very angry. If there's any rasabhas, incompatible mixturing of different mellows or rasas, and Mahaprabhu would be angry to hear it. So they had first Swarup Damodar, who was very capable of discerning if there's rasabhas or siddhanta virodhi. He would listen, and then he would, if he found the poem to be, only if he found the poem to be acceptable, or whatever literary composition it was, if it was acceptable, then he would present it to Mahaprabhu. Ateva Prabhu Kichu Age Nahi Shune He Marjara Prabhu Korijache Niyame. Therefore Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would not hear anything before Swarup Damodar heard it first. The Lord made this etiquette a regulative principle. Swarupera Tayacharya Koilani Vedan Ek Bipra Prabhurnata Koriyache Uttam. Bhagavanacharya submitted to Swarup Damodar. A good Brahmin has prepared a drama about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that appears exceptionally well composed. Ado tumi shuna jari tomara man mane pache Mahaprabhure tabe koraimu shravane. First you hear it, and if it is acceptable to your mind, I shall request Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to hear it. Swarup kohe tumi gopa parama udar jaise shastra shunite icha apa jay tomar. Swarup Damodar replied, Dear Bhagavanacharya, you are a very liberal cowherd boy. Sometimes the desire awakens within you to hear any kind of poetry. I also find this to be true. There are many, many devotees, and not all of them are so discerning as to know what is acceptable as far as literature is is concerned, or what is acceptable even to hear in terms of what a lecture is presenting, or a preacher. So. Jadva tadva kavir bakye hoy rasabas siddhanta viruna shunite na hoy ulas. In the writings of so-called poets, there is generally a possibility of overlapping transcendental mellows. When the mellows thus go against the conclusive understanding, no one likes to hear such poetry. Yadva Tadva Kavi refers to anyone who writes poetry without knowledge of how to do so. Writing poetry, especially poetry concerning the Vaishnava conclusion, is very difficult. If one writes poetry without proper knowledge, there is every possibility that the mellows will overlap. When this occurs, no learned or advanced Vaishnava would like to hear it. So, also, we've heard that regarding the poet in Bengal, Rabindra das Thakur, or Rabindranath Thakur, that his poetry expresses Vaishnava sentiments and Vaishnava philosophy, but it is said that the poet himself, he was not a Vaishnava. He was more of the smarta conclusions. So, although Govinda Maharaj appreciated the poetry of Rabindranath, Guru Maharaj didn't want to hear it because he knew that Rabindranath wasn't a practicing Vaishnava. So sometimes we see that the different persons will appreciate different compositions or writing, but here everything had to pass through Swarup Damodar, who would be able to know if there was rasabhas or conclusions against the Vaishnava principles. Rasabhas jara nahi ka bichar bhakti siddhanta sindhu nahi pai par. A so-called poet who has no knowledge of transcendental mellows and the overlapping of transcendental mellows cannot cross the ocean of the conclusions of devotional service. Vyakaran nahi jani na jani alankar nataka lankara jnana nahi ka jahar Krishna-lila varnite na jani sechar viseshe durgama e Chaitanya bihar. A poet who does not know the grammatical regular principles, who is unfamiliar with metaphorical ornaments, especially those employed in drama, and who does not know how to present the pastimes of Lord Krishna is condemned. Moreover, the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are especially difficult to understand. Krishna-lila, Gora-lila, Sekore, Varnan, Gorapada Padma Jara, Hoy Pranadan. One who has accepted the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his life and soul can describe the pastimes of Lord Krishna or the pastimes of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gramya Kavira Kavitwa Shunite Hoy Duk Vidagda Atmiya Bhakya Shunite Hoy Suk. Hearing the poetry of a person who has no transcendental knowledge and who writes about the relationships between man and woman simply causes unhappiness, whereas hearing the words of a devotee fully absorbed in ecstatic love causes great happiness. Gramya Kavi refers to a poet or writer such as the authors of novels and other fiction who write only about the relationships between man and woman. Vidagda Atmiya Bhakya, however, refers to words written by a devotee who fully understands pure devotional service. Such devotees who follow the parampara system are sometimes described as Sajatiya Yashaya Snigdha, or pleasing to the same class of people. Only the poetry and other writings of such devotees are accepted with great happiness by devotees. Rupa Jaiche Dui Nata Koryache Arambe Shunite Ananda Bhare Jara Mukha Bande. The standard for writing dramas has been set by Rupa Goswami. If a devotee hears the introductory portions of his two dramas, they enhance one's transcendental pleasure. Bhagavan Acharya Kohe Shuna Ekbar Tumi Shunile Balo Manda Jani Bebichar. Despite the explanation of Swarup Damodar, Bhagavan Acharya requested, please hear the drama once. If you hear it, you can consider whether it is good or bad. Duitin Din Acharya Agraha Korila Tara Agrahe Swaruper Shunite Icha Hoila. For 2 to 3 days, Bhagavan Acharya continually asked Swarup Damodar to hear the poetry. Because of his repeated request, Swarup Damodar wanted to hear the poetry written by the Brahmin from Bengal. Sabloya Swarup Goshai Shunite Basila Tabise Kabi Nandi Shloka Padila. Swarup Damodar sat down with other devotees to hear the poetry, and then the poet began to read the introductory verses. The introductory verse. Vikacha Kamala Netre Sri Jagannath Samge Kanaka Ruchira Ihat Mani Atmatam Ya Prapana Prakriti Jadam Asesham Chaitayan Avirasit Sadisatu Taba Bhavyam Krishna Chaitanya Deva. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has assumed a golden complexion and has become the soul of the body named Lord Jagannath, whose blooming lotus eyes are widely expanded. Thus he has appeared in Jagannath Puri and brought dull matter to life. May that Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Dev bestow all good fortune upon you. Shloka Shuni Sabalok Tahare Bhakkane Swarup Kohe E Shloka Kora Bhyakyane. When everyone present heard the verse, they all commended the poet, but Swarup Damodar requested him, kindly explain this verse. Kavi Kohe Jagannath Sundara Sharir Chaitanya Gosai Sharire Mahadir. Kavi Kohe Jagannath Sundara Sharir Chaitanya Gosai Shariri Mahadir. The poet said, Lord Jagannath is the most beautiful body, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is exceptionally grave, is the owner of that body. Shariri refers to a person who owns a sharir, or body, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Dehino sminyata dehe kumaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. For the ordinary living being, in material existence, there is a division or distinction between the body and the owner of the body. In spiritual existence, however, there is no such distinction, for the body is the owner himself, and the owner is the body itself. In spiritual existence, everything must be spiritual. Therefore, there is no distinction between the body and its owner. In spiritual existence, there is no such distinction, for the body is the owner himself, and the owner is the body. Sahaje jada jagatera chaitana karaite nilachale Mahaprabhu hoila avirbhute. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared in Nilachala, Jagannath Puri, to spiritualize the entire dull material world. Shunya sabar hoila nanditaman dukapaya swarup kohe sakroda bachan. Hearing this, everyone present was greatly happy, but Swarup Damodar, who alone was very unhappy, began to speak in great anger. Are murka apanar koili sarvanash duita ishware tara nahika vishwas. You are a fool, he said. You have brought ill fortune upon yourself, for you have no knowledge of the existence of the two Lords, Jagannath Dev and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, nor have you faith in them. Purnananda Chid Swarup Jagannath Raya Tarikaili Jara Nashabar Prakrita Kai. Lord Jagannath is completely spiritual and full of transcendental bliss, but you have compared him to a dull, destructible body composed of the inert external energy of the Lord. Purnashad Aishwarya Chaitanya Swayam Bhagavan Tare Kaili Kudrajiva Svulinga Saman. You have calculated Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the Supreme Personality Godhead, full in six opulences, to be on the level of an ordinary living being. Instead of knowing him as the supreme fire, you have accepted him as a spark. Duitai aparade paibe durgati atatva gya tattva varne tara Eriti Swarup Damodar continue, because you have committed an offense to Lord Jagannath and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you will attain a hellish destination. You do not know how to describe the absolute truth, but nevertheless you have tried to do so. Therefore you must be condemned. Ara ekorijacha parama pramara deho dehi veda ishware koile aparad. You are in complete illusion, for you have distinguished between the body and the soul of His Lordship, Lord Jagannath or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That is a great offense. Ishwarer nahi kabu deho dehi ved Swarup Deha, Chidananda Nahika Bibed. At no time is there a distinction between the body and the soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His personal identity and His body are made of blissful spiritual existence. There is no distinction between them. Deha Dehi Vibhagoyam Neshvare Vidya Kvachit. There is no distinction between the body and soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at any time. Nata param paramayad bhavata swarupam anandamatram avikalpam avidab varcha pashyami vishva srijam ekam avishvam atman bhutendriyatmaka marastha upashritosmi tadvaidam bhuvana mangala mangalaya jnane smana dur darashitam ta upashakanam tasmai mano bhagavate nu videma tubhyam yonadrito naraka bhagbir asat prasanga. O my Lord, I do not see a form superior to your present form of eternal bliss and knowledge. In your impersonal Brahman effulgence in the spiritual sky, there is no occasional change and no deterioration of internal potency. I surrender unto you because whereas I am proud of my material body and senses, your Lordship is the cause of the cosmic manifestation, yet you are untouched by matter. This present form, or any transcendental form expanded by the Supreme Personality of God as Sri Krishna, is equally auspicious for all the universes, since you have manifest this eternal personal form upon which your devotees meditate. I therefore offer since you have manifested this eternal personal form upon whom your devotees meditate, I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Those who are destined to be dispatched to the path of hell neglect your personal form because of speculating on material topics. Kahan Purnananda Ishvarya Krishna Maheshwar, Kahan Kudra Jiva Duki Mayara Kinkar. Whereas Krishna, the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of God, is full of transcendental bliss, possesses all six spiritual opulences in full, and is the master of the material energy. The small conditioned soul, who is always unhappy, is the servant of the material energy. The living entity is an ever-conditioned servant of the material energy, whereas Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the master of the material energy. How then could they be on an equal level? There can be no comparison between them. His Lordship is always in a happy condition, of transcendental bliss, whereas the conditioned soul is always unhappy because of his contact with the material energy. The Supreme Lord controls the material energy, and the material energy controls the conditioned soul. There is therefore no comparison between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the ordinary living being. There is therefore no comparison between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the ordinary living entities. Ladinya samveda shlishta sachidanandishvara svavidya samvrito jiva sanklesha nikarakara. The Supreme Personality of God, the Supreme Controller, is always full of transcendental bliss and is accompanied by the potencies known as Ladini and Samvit. The conditioned soul, however, is always covered by ignorance and embarrassed by the threefold miseries of life. Thus, he is a treasure house of all kinds of tribulations. Shuni sabha sader chite hoila chamatkar satyako he gosai duhara koriache tiraskar. Hearing this explanation, all the members of the assembly were struck with wonder. Swarup Damodar has spoken the real truth, they admitted. The Brahmin from Bengal has committed an offense by wrongly describing Lord Jagannath and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shunya Kabir Hoila Dalajabai Vishmoy Bamshamade Bakajaichi. Shunya Kabira Hoila Lajabaya Vishmoy Hamsamaje Baka Jaiche Kichuna Hikoi. When the Bengali poet heard this chastisement from Swarup Damodar, he was ashamed, fearful, and astonished. Indeed, being like a duck in a society of white swans, he could not say anything. Taraduka deki Swarup Sadai Ridoi Upadesha Koila Tare Jaichi Hita Hoi. Seeing the poet's unhappiness, Swarup Damodar, who was naturally very kind-hearted, advised him so that he could derive some benefit. Seeing the poet's unhappiness, Swarup Damodar, who was naturally very kind-hearted, advised him so that he could derive some benefit. Jaha Bhagavat Pada Vaishnava Stane Ekanta Shraya Kora Chaitanya Charane. If you want to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, he said, you must approach a self-realized Vaishnav and hear from him. You can do this when you have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Bhakta Ganer Nitya Kora Sangha Tabeta Janiba Siddhanta Samudra Taranga. Swarup Damodar continued, associate regularly with the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for then only will you understand the waves of the ocean of devotional service. Tabeta Panditya Tomar Hoibe Safal Krishnara Swarup Lila Barniva Nirmal. So Swarup Damodar is instructing the Bengali poet. He says, you have to surrender to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for then only will you understand the waves of the ocean of devotional service. So only a devotee in the line of Mahaprabhu will actually understand the relationship between the Lord and the living entities, and who is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and who is Lord Jagannath. Tabeta Pandit Yatomar Hoibe Safal Krishnara Swarup Lila Varniva Nirmal. Only if you follow the principles of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees will your learning be successful. Then you will be able to write about the transcendental pastimes of Krishna without material contamination. Shloka Koryacha Paya Santosh Tomara Ridayera Arte Duhaya Lagedosh. You have composed this introductory verse to your great satisfaction, but the meaning you have expressed is contaminated by offenses to both Lord Jagannath and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Tumi Jai Chaitanya Kahana Janiya Riti Saraswati Se Shabde Koryache Stuti. You have written something irregular, not knowing the regulative principles, but the goddess of learning, You have written something irregular, not knowing the regulative principles, but the goddess of learning, Saraswati, has used your words to offer her prayers to the Supreme Lord. So Saraswati has spoken through you, although you compose this irregularly, but there is here something which is acceptable because Saraswati has spoken through your words. Jaiche Indra Daityadi Kore Krishnara Bartsan Se Shabdi Saraswati Koranastavan. Sometimes demons and even Lord Indra, the king of heaven, chastise Krishna, but Mother Saraswati, taking advantage of their words, offered prayers to the Lord. Vachalam Balisham Stabdam Agyam Pandita Moninam. Vachalam Balisham Stabdam Agyam Pandita Maninam. Krishna Martyam Upashritya Gopame Chakrur Apriyam. Lord Indra said, this Krishna, who is an ordinary living being, is talkative, childish, impudent, and ignorant, although he thinks himself very learned. The coward men in Vrindavan have offended me by accepting him. This has not been greatly appreciated by me. We're on Antya 5, verse 138. Aishvarya Mare Mata Indra Jena Mato Jao Buddhi Nasha Hoila Kevala Nahika Sambhal. Indra, the king of heaven, being too proud of his heavenly opulences, becomes like a madman. Thus bereft of his intelligence, he could not restrain himself from speaking nonsensically about Krishna. Indra bole mui Krishnara Koryache Nindan Tarai Muke Saraswati Korana Staban. Thus Indra thought, I have properly chastised Krishna and defamed him. But Saraswati, the goddess of learning, took this opportunity to offer prayers to Krishna. Bachala kohiye veda, pravartaka danya, balisha tatapi sishup, praigarva shunya. Because here in the original verse, Indra had said, Vachalam balisham stabdam agyam pandita maninam krishnam martyam upashritya gopame chakrur apriyam. Indra said, this Krishna is an ordinary human being. This Krishna, who is an ordinary human being, is talkative, childish, impudent, and ignorant, although he thinks himself very learned. The cowherd men in Vrindavan have offended me by accepting him. This has not been greatly appreciated by me. Thus, Indra thought, I have properly chastised Krishna and defamed him, but Saraswati, the goddess of fortune, took this opportunity to offer prayers to Krishna. Vachalam kohiye veda pravartika danya balisha tatapi sishu praya garvad shunya. Vachala kohiye veda pravartika danya balisha tatapi sishu praya garva shunya. The word Vachala is used to refer to a person who can speak according to Vedic authority, and the word Balisha means innocent. Krishna spoke the Vedic knowledge, yet he always presents himself as a prideless, innocent boy. Banyabave Anamra stabda shabde koi jahoite anya vigya nahi se agya hoy. When there is no one else to receive obeisances, one may be called anamra, or one who offers obeisances to no one. This is the meaning of the word stabda, and because no one is found to be more learned than Krishna, he may be called agya, indicating that nothing is unknown to him. Panditara manyapatra hoy pandita mani tatapi bhakte vatsaye manusya abhimani. The one word pandita mani can be used to indicate that Krishna is honored even by learned scholars. Nevertheless, because of affection for his devotees, Krishna appears like an ordinary human being and may therefore be called Martya. Charasanda kohe Krishna Purusha Adama Tara Sange na vid Eugene Mu Jadibanda Hoya. Jarasandya kohe Krishna Purushadam Tora Sange na na yujimu jahe bandhuhan. The demon Jarasandha chastised Krishna, saying, you are the lowest of human beings. I shall not fight with you, for you have killed your own relatives. In this verse also, Mother Saraswati offers prayers to Krishna. The word Purusha Adama refers to the personality of Godhead, under whom all other persons remain, or in other words, Purusha Uttama, the best of all living beings. Under whom all other persons remain. Similarly, the word Bandhuhan means the killer of Maya. In the conditioned state of life, one is closely related with Maya as a friend, but when one comes in contact with Krishna, one is freed from that relationship. Jahoite anya purusha sakala adama se hoy purusha dama sarasvatirman. Mother Saraswati takes Purusha Dhamma to mean Purushottama, he to whom all men are subordinate. Bande sabare date avidya bandhu hoy avidya nashika bandhu han shabde koi. Nescience or Maya may be called bandhu because she entangles everyone in the material world. Therefore, by using the word bandhuhan, Mother Saraswati says that Lord Krishna is the vanquisher of Maya. Everyone is entangled in the illusory energy, but is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam mitam tarante te. As soon as one surrenders to Krishna, he is free from Maya. Therefore, Krishna may be called Bandhuhan, the killer of Maya. Emata Shishupala Korila Nindan Sebakye Saraswati Korana Stavan Emata Shishupala Korila Nindan Sebakye Saraswati Korana Stavan. Shishupala also blasphemed Krishna in this way, but the goddess of learning Saraswati offered her prayers to Krishna even by his words. Taiche. You have to turn down the speaker a little bit. Hay que bajar a parlante afuera un poquito. Emata Shishupal Korila Nindan Sebake Saraswati Koranastavan. Shishupal also blasphemed Krishna in this way, but the goddess of learning, Saraswati, offered her prayers to Krishna even by his words. Taiche Shloke Tomara Arte Nindai Aishe Saraswatir Artashuna Jate Stuti Base. In this way, although your verse is blasphemous according to your meaning, Mother Saraswati has taken advantage of it to offer prayers to the Lord. Jagannath Hana Krishnera Atama Swarup Kinduihan Daru Brahma Stavara Swarup. There is no difference between Lord Jagannath and Krishna, but here Lord Jagannath is fixed as the absolute person, appearing in wood. Therefore, he does not move. There is no difference between Lord Jagannath and Krishna, but here Lord Jagannath is fixed as the absolute person appearing in wood. Therefore, he does not move. Tahasaha Atmata Ek Rupa Hoila Krishna Tattva Rup Dui Rupa Hoya. Then Lord Jagannath. Thus Lord Jagannath and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although appearing as two, are one because they are both Krishna, who is one alone. Samsara tarana hetu jai icha shakti tahara milana kore ekata jai she prapti. The supreme desire to deliver the entire world meets in the two of them, and for that reason also they are one and the same. Sakala samsare lokera korite udar. Sakala samsare loker korite udar gora jangama rupe koila avatar. To deliver all the materially contaminated people of the world. That same Krishna has descended in the moving form of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. To deliver all the materially contaminated people of the world, that same Krishna has descended in the moving form of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jagannathara darshane kandaya samsar sajad. Okay. Jagannathara darshane kandaya samsar sabadeshara sabloka naraya shibar. By visiting Lord Jagannath, one is freed from material existence, but not all men of all countries can come to be admitted herein in Jagannath Puri. By visiting Lord Jagannath, one is freed from material existence, but not all men of all countries can come or be admitted here. in Jagannath Puri. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Deshe Deshe Jana Sabloke Nishtarila Jaga Jangama Brahman Hoya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, moves from one country to another, personally or by his representative. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, moves from one country to another, personally or by his representative. Thus he, as the moving Brahman, delivers all the people of the world. Sarasvatir Arte Kohilun Vivaran Eho Bhagya Tomaraiche Korile Varnan. Thus I have explained the meaning intended by Mother Saraswati, the goddess of fortune. It is your great fortune that you have described Lord Jagannath and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in that way. Krishna Gali Dite Kore Nama Ucharan Se Nama Hoy Tara Muktiraj Karan. Sometimes it so happens that one who wants to chastise Krishna utters the holy name, and thus the holy name becomes the cause of all his liberation. Sometimes it so happens that one who wants to chastise Krishna utters the holy name, and thus the holy name becomes the cause of his liberation. Tabi se kabi sabar charane padiya sabar sharana loyla dante trina loya. Upon hearing the proper explanation by Swarup Damodar, the Bengali poet fell down at the feet of all the devotees and took shelter of them with a straw in his mouth. Tabisa bhakta tare angikara koila taraguna kohe mahaprabhure milaila. Thereupon all the devotees accepted his association. Explaining his humble behavior, they introduced him to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Se kavi sarva tyaje rohila nilachale gora bhakta ganer kripa ke kohite pare. By the mercy of the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the poet from Bengal gave up all activities and stayed with him at Jagannath Puri. Who can explain the mercy of the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? By the mercy of the devotees of Mahaprabhu, that poet from Bengal gave up all other activities and stayed with him at Jagannath Puri. Who can explain the mercy of the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Eta kohilun pradyumna Mishra vivaran prabhura gyaya koila Krishna-katha rashavan. I have thus described the narration concerning Pradyumna Mishra and how, following the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he listened to discourses about Krishna spoken by Ramananda Raya. Taramadye kohilun Ramanandera mahima apane Sri Mukhe Prabhu varne jarasima. Within the narration, I have explained the glorious characteristics of Sri Ramananda Raya, through whom Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally described the limits of ecstatic love for Krishna. Prastave kohilun kavir nataka vivaran agya haya shradhai paila prabhuracharan. In the course of the narration, I have also told about the drama by the poet from Bengal. Although he was ignorant because of his faith and humility, he nevertheless obtained shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Krishna Chaitanya-lila amriterasar ek lila prabhahid bahe shata shatadar. The pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are the essence of nectar. From the stream of one of his pastimes flowing from the stream of one of his pastimes flow hundreds and thousands of branches. Shraddha Korye Lila Jay Pare Shune Gora Lila Bhakti Bhakta Rasa Tattva Jane. Anyone who reads and hears these pastimes with faith and love can understand the truth about devotional service, devotees, and the transcendental mellows of the pastimes of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Rupa Raghunath Parijara As Chaitanya Charitamrita Kohe Krishna das. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy. I, Krishna das, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya-lila, 5th chapter, describing how Pradyumna Mishra received instructions from Ramananda Raya. Hare Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Garadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Garadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jaoite Vignana Shabishta Puran Jaoite Vignana Shabishta Puran H.I. Gosai Jar Mui Taradas H.I. Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Tasabar para renu mora panchagras Tasabara para renu mora panchagras Tader charana sevi bhakta sanivas Tader charana sevi bhakta sanivas Janame janame more abilas Janame more abilas H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Radha Krishna Antya-lila Korila Prakash Radha Krishna Antya-lila Korila Prakash Anande Bolo Hari Bansha Vrindavan Anande Bolo Hari Bansha Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koryas Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koryas Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratam Modas Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratam Modas Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakshidhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dash Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Prem Sikha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vishvavaranya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Maya Kapoor Ki Jai. Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Saparshada Shri Man Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Shri Koladvip Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Sokel Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Sevashram Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Madharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan Sham Kuna Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Srila Krishna das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari.